This is the Vic Feazell Show podcast, hosted by Vic Feazell and Jonathan Zimick. Sponsored by Moroso Wood-Fired Pizza, Pinewood Coffee Bar, and the law offices of Vic Feazell.
So what I just got done reading was the confession that Henry gave on Orange Socks. And it was a confession that Jim Boutwell wrote out and then Henry signed off on. But what we also have is a transcript of the interview that Jim Boutwell did with Henry to ultimately result in that handwritten confession. So Vic, start off with it.
The interview began at 9:07 a.m. on June 22nd, 1983. They did this in the Montague County Jail. I already told you about that. Boutwell brought his little recorder with him.
Yeah.
I saw that recorder numerous times. Yeah, he always wanted to record me. I wouldn't let him do it. Yeah. He got into the jail to see Henry and recorded Henry saying some things and then used them out of context.
We said, and that was his thing, right? It was that little recorder, and whenever there was a discrepancy, he'd run in with Henry, and he'd record the clearing up of it, then run back out.
Yeah.
See, Henry said.
Yeah, he'd go in and get a Henry Band-Aid, say this, Henry. And then come out and play it to the media or type it up and have Henry sign it. Yeah. That's how they fixed the problem with the paperwork in Jacksonville.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Henry's lawyers had all these documents proving that Henry couldn't have been anywhere near Georgetown in late October of 1979.
Right.
The document showed that he was in Jacksonville.
Right. And the documents are, he was working at the time.
He was working.
And he had a supervisor sign off that he was there the day before the Orange Sox murder and the day after. He was there.
He was there.
He was absolutely there. And there was a supervisor as well as like an assistant one who both testified at the trial that he was in fact there in Jacksonville, Florida.
And he had to sign to get his check when he sold the scrap metal.
Right, right.
And they have those documents and the check that he got. And then he had to sign the back of the check across the street when he cashed it at the convenience store. Mm-hmm. And they had that document. And so he was there those days.
And they had a handwriting expert too, didn't you say? That came in and verified that's his writing. Yep. That was him. He cashed it.
They did. They had the DPS handwriting expert.
Oh, wow.
I mean, good for him. At least he wouldn't lie.
Yeah.
He said, no, this is his signature. But Henry said, Boutwell interviewed Henry with his little recorder, and Henry said, that's not my signature. I paid them to do that. I taught them.
Oh, really?
I taught them how to sign it like me. And then Boutwell, when he was on the stand, then he would say, yeah, and I asked Henry about that, and here's what Henry said, and he'd play it. Well, see, it's not hearsay when it's the defendant, and he's just sitting right over there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sort of a way to kind of like snag them and make them give up their Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Either the jury's gonna believe what that cop is saying that you said, or you got to get up there and deny it. And if you get up there and deny it, then you're free game. They can ask you anything. So, wow. Yeah. So that's a dilemma. That's always a dilemma for a criminal defense lawyer and his client.
And that's one of the huge, and to kind of loop it, that's one of the huge pieces of evidence on the case. Mm-hmm. Straight up. Yeah. We have proof he was in Jacksonville, Florida.
We do.
So right off the bat, you have 3 independent witnesses, a supervisor, assistant supervisor, and the person who cashed the check. 3 people who said he was here. Mm-hmm. And for him to have done it, he had to drive 70 miles an hour straight without stopping all the way to Oklahoma to grab her or wherever, kill her, then drive all the way back to be at work the next day, which is that's not probable.
No, man. I don't think a NASCAR driver could do that. That's a lot of driving. And when they'd say that crap about, well, with Henry's driving habits, anything's possible. That's why in my office we nicknamed Henry Rocket Man.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Rocket Man.
Rocket Man.
Because he'd have had to have had a rocket to get around all those places.
So what was the next big issue with his confession?
I'm still looking at Henry talking to him about his lawyer. He's got a lawyer on the way. That's what I was reading about. That's why I was hesitating.
So his lawyer's on the way.
Yeah, not Parker McCullough.
But he's not there while he's making this confession?
Right.
Oh, great.
But Henry agrees to go ahead and talk to him, even though his lawyer has told him not to talk to anybody. And he's told the law enforcement people and the people at the jail, I don't want anybody talking to my client. But they go in and talk to him anyway.
Wow.
And it's basically, well, you're going to talk to us, Henry, right? Well, yeah. And so he starts talking to him before his lawyer gets there. In their defense, he talks to him even after his lawyer gets there. So he had already made up his mind what he was going to do. He was just going to confess to all of them. He was having trouble figuring out what the facts were.
Okay.
And so he needed Boutwell's help to know what the facts were. Boutwell tells Lucas he's interested in some things that may have happened down my way. He tells Lucas he's from Georgetown and that Georgetown is north of Austin, south Waco. Gives him a little bit of a perspective. That's okay. That's good. That's just putting a pin in a map for him.
Yeah.
That's good law enforcement.
Fair.
Lucas replies, well, I've got some around that area. I know it. I can't give you no exact spots, but I've kidnapped some women from there. I've picked up some women from there, and I've also left some women in that area. That's a start.
Still meets criteria. All right,
That's a start. Yeah. How's your recollection of, say, back in the fall of 1979? Well, that's a little leading, but that's okay. That's still just like a pin in a map. You got, especially somebody says, I've killed 100 people. Well, you got to give them a little idea of when it was, which one of these 100 people.
Okay.
So I'm still giving them the benefit of the doubt here. Lucas, 1979, it's pretty good, I believe. His recollection is pretty good. I picked one up on Highway 35. Let's see, that would be an intersection coming on to 35. I took her for, let's see, it would have been, I took her way down on the low part of Texas. The low part of Texas. Which low part of Texas? That would have been around somewhere in the San Antonio area. Okay.
So we're right into this thing, and already he's off.
He's off by about 100 miles. Yeah.
Close.
But he says he's killed 100.
Right.
You can expect him to get a little confused. So I'm still giving him the benefit of the doubt. Boutwell asked him, Boutwell's smart. He skips over the San Antonio part, and he asked him something else. He said, do you remember where you picked her up? All I know, it's an off ramp. She was just standing by this off ramp when I picked her up, and he described the victim as being 5'7" to 5'9", weighing about 140 pounds, with long brown hair, maybe 18, 20 years old. The way Henry tells it is that Boutwell had put the autopsy report down on the desk right between them, and all that information
was just right there.
Was just right there. Maybe it wasn't the autopsy report, but it was some kind of incident report.
Yeah, it was something that Boutwell had sent out to all the stations, other police agencies in Texas that had, it was like case information on it.
Okay, that's what it was. It was that case information sheet he had sent out.
Yeah,
and it had those identifying details.
Yes.
Henry says if anybody ever found her, she would have been found sexually assaulted. She would have several stab wounds, probably some through her breast and probably some through her chest cavity.
All right.
Well, there's another problem. We got two problems now. We got San Antonio, a problem. Then we got stab wounds, a problem,
and we have the sex assault problem.
Yeah, that's true.
So there were two people who testified about this, and the one was there was no semen found in her anywhere, and they did a number of swabs as well as on the Kotex, which we'll get into in a minute. And they found no trauma to her that would indicate sexual assault at all. And he said he had sex with her before or while she was alive, and then while she was deceased. So autopsy showed no trauma to her.
He said, I like dead sex better.
All right.
Just to remind people, and I'm not sure which order we're putting these in, but we've already talked about how Henry was impotent.
Yes.
He couldn't get it up.
And that was linked back to, I think it was like 59 or something, where he was assaulted in jail.
In jail. He was stabbed, yeah.
By someone who thought he was snitching on him about a jail escape, and the guy went and stabbed him. And supposedly the blade went through the stomach and through the rectum. And I guess cut a bunch of stuff. I guess it's a pretty decent blade where it rendered him impotent. Like you said, two issues right there. The stabbing, there were no stab wounds, and B, the sexual assault, which, and I know from your point of view too, they did not have the testing back then like they do now. All they could test for was sperm as well as check for trauma. So, however our audience wants to feel that's the information we have.
Yeah.
Could he have, or could someone have? Sure.
All that's just a wash when it comes to this case. And then there's no semen found, no sign of sexual assault.
Right.
Henry, on almost all his confessions, would say he has sexually assaulted the woman.
Okay.
Almost always. And a lot of the women that he said he sexually assaulted had venereal disease show up in their autopsy reports. Yes.
So he should have been just festering.
He should have been festering, yeah, or at least should be evidence in his blood work that he had venereal disease.
Right.
Well, there's no evidence that Henry ever had any kind of venereal disease.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
These are interesting facts, Vic.
Interesting facts, yeah. And that's because Henry became impotent way back there.
Yep.
Yeah. But he always confessed to sexually assaulting and molesting these women. So Boutwell asked, where would the body have been found? So he's going back to the San Antonio thing. So where would the body have been found? And Henry says she would have been probably, and it's interesting with Henry's, I'm sorry I keep interrupting myself. That's all right.
Are you apologizing?
Yeah, you're forgiven.
For yourself. That's fair.
She would have been probably outside of San Antonio. Now, Henry talked that way when he was doing his confessions. Now, talking to me and you, he wouldn't talk that way. But, he didn't say probably outside of San Antonio or outside of San Antonio. She would have been. That's kind of hedging it a little.
Yeah, it's kind of fluid.
She would have been probably. She would have been probably outside San Antonio. So that gives him wiggle room, see. I'd been on 35 and then turned off 35 you go away on a blacktop off 35. And she would have been in a sort of a field, a grassy area. I don't remember any fences, but I know it's back off the roadway. We know that she was in a concrete culvert, not out in a grassy field.
We know that there was a fence because there's a big metal guardrail.
Well, that big metal guardrail.
Which is like 3 feet off the ground.
Yeah. And it was right there on the shoulder of I-35.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right there on I-35 with traffic going by. So it wasn't out in a grassy area and it wasn't down the blacktop road. So then Lucas tells Boutwell that he picked a victim up in Austin, heading north, and then he killed her in a Lover's Lane type area site. He said that was late 79. And then he started, he's talking about other killings. He's just trying to find anything I think that Boutwell will
latch
bite
onto.
on.
Oh, that's it.
And then he says he killed a 12 or a 14-year-old. He said he picked her up in Austin and he raped her and killed her and left her nude body near a camping resort close to Del Rio. And so he says, let's get back to another area around that time. Did you ever drop one off at a culvert that crosses Interstate 35? All right, now see, Henry just said, I killed her, and I turned off down by San Antonio. And now, okay, all right. He says he killed 100, so let's give Boutwell the benefit of the doubt here. So I'll give Boutwell the benefit of the doubt here. This is planting another pin in the map, sort of time wise. So, did you drop one off at a culvert that crossed Interstate 35? So he's pretty much told him now what I need to hear. Right. Oh yeah, that culvert on Interstate 35. But he's still fishing around. I'm reading this as I'm talking. So he says, yeah, I have, but I don't remember the exact location.
What's really cool, too, Vic, about what we're talking about is, the thing I read earlier was the actual handwritten confession that Jim Boutwell had written out for Henry, then he signed. And what you're reading from is the actual audio tape of the conversation that occurred before this was even written down, before the confession was written down that day. So you can already tell the discrepancies between them and the coaching that went into play to get this confession.
Yes, I'm reading the interview, the interrogation. Henry said, I had sex with her before and at the time I dropped her off. He always said, I like that dead sex.
Yep.
And we've already talked about how he was impotent. He couldn't have sex at all. He said, I did it in the car. We just backed up in a roadside picnic area. So then Boutwell asked him, this is sort of a leading question here.
Okay.
All right, so you had sex. Boutwell's wanting corroborating evidence. A confession alone legally really isn't enough. That confession has to be corroborated by some physical evidence. You have to say something in this confession that, oh yeah, well there's that piece of evidence. See?
Okay.
Like the matchbooks. We talked about the matchbooks earlier, I think.
Not quite yet.
Not
but
quite. Well,
so yeah, and so at the scene, to give everybody an idea, what they found was her body totally nude with the exception of the orange socks on, and 2 matchbooks that were near the body. So that was it. Besides his confession, all they had was a body, some socks, and 2 matchbooks.
And That's matchbooks. It. And the matchbooks were from a truck stop in Oklahoma?
Yes, I believe one of them was. And one from a hotel.
Yeah, something like that. But that's where Henry told me, in Maddox that he had seen those matchbooks in the photographs that Boutwell showed him.
Oh.
And so that's when he figured out, well, I could say I picked her up in Oklahoma. And so then that's what his confession ultimately morphed into, is I picked her up in Oklahoma. Now, where we left off was that he was still disposing of the body down by San Antonio.
Right.
We're eventually going to get up here somewhere where Boutwell just shows him the picture of where the body was found.
Right.
Does that look familiar? So anyway, Boutwell then asked sort of a leading question. He says, well, was it pretty good, or was there something different about it? Talking about sex with her. Was it pretty good, or was there something different about it? Well, Henry said that question let him know that
something was a little unique about this.
Yeah, that something wasn't quite right. So he said he just decided to take a guess. And he goes, well, I'd say it was good, but it just didn't satisfy me. As far as satisfaction, it seemed like she was wearing something. I don't remember what it was, though. I don't know whether a Kotex or something, or she had something on, seems like. So then Boutwell says, oh, so you mean you think she was having her period? Mm-hmm. And Lucas said, yeah, seems like she was. I ain't absolutely positive of it, but I think she was. I remember her hollering or screaming or something when I put it in.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was. So, he's fishing all over the place.
Yes.
Boutwell has let him know that something wasn't quite right about that sexual experience. Was it pretty good, or was there something different about it? I hope our listeners forgive me for imitating Boutwell and Henry the way they talk. But
I like your voices.
I spent a lot of time around them, and I like using the voices.
Fair.
So Boutwell You think she might have been on her period? No, that's kind of leading. Lucas, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the same one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the same one. Yeah. I remember he's told Boutwell he killed 100, so I'll give Boutwell a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. But it's getting close. Boutwell, did she take the Kotex off, or did you take it off? Well, before up here, he wasn't sure it was a Kotex. It might have been something, but now it's a Kotex. But
right.
It wasn't even that.
Right.
In evidence,
it was a handkerchief, right?
It was like a handkerchief she had been using like that because she was on her period. Yeah.
And it was found by the roadside or something too, right? It wasn't like next to her body. It was above the road.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous. But
yeah.
Please continue. This is quite lightning.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the same one. And then did you take it off or did you take it off? She took something off, but I don't know whether it was a Kotex or not. And then Lucas said that whatever it was, she put it back on afterwards. But he didn't know what it was because she dressed in the back of the car.
Thinking about the car, now let's talk about this because we have some footage of Lucas with Hugh Ainsworth and some other folks at the scene of where Orange Socks occurred. And Jim Boutwell is there as well. And he's asked how many people were with him during the Orange Socks murder. And he says, including Deborah Jackson, Orange Socks, there were 5.
How many people were in the car, actually?
At that time, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, counting her.
Mr. Lucas, Mr. Toole, Buddy, Becky, and who else?
Little Frank.
So he says it was him, it was Otis Toole, it was Becky, and it was Becky's brother, Frank. And then Deborah Jackson. 5 people. How's she changing in the back of a car with 5 people in it?
Well, that's how Henry's stories would change. He had trouble keeping all of it straight because he didn't mention any of that when he confessed to Boutwell up in Montague County. Mm-hmm. If he did, it's not on the audio because there are long periods where Boutwell was with Henry, but the tape recorder wasn't on. Mm-hmm. One significant period during part of the drive from Montague back to Georgetown with just Boutwell and Henry in the car, and then this Boutwell turning the tape recorder on when he wanted it on. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, his story changes when what you were talking about, that interview sometime later. It was after, I think even after he was convicted of Orange Socks, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Then he goes saying that Otis Toole was in the car with him. Yeah. It was actually Otis that strangled her, not him.
Yeah.
Otis says he's in the back seat. That's not true, is it? Yeah. Was he in the back seat? He didn't strangle her, though. Yeah. He did?
Then Boutwell decides, well, I'll just show him a picture of the victim. So he just tosses out a picture of Orange Socks on the table and shows it to him. And Lucas looks at it and says, well, I know that's the same girl. Yeah, I see the picture there. And Boutwell goes, well, are you positive? Lucas says, I'm positive of it. So, yeah, all right, so you don't know where you were. You say you stabbed her. She ain't stabbed. I'm going to take care of that stabbing stuff right now. I'm just going to throw this picture out there. Well, you can see from the picture she ain't been stabbed, And then Lucas tells Boutwell that he's been killing since he was 13 years old. I've been killing since I was 13 years old. The first person I ever killed was my school teacher. That's on his confession.
Really?
Yeah, when he was 13. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is not factually true. No school teacher up there ever got murdered. Yeah. So he said I'd done about 100 murders. And then again, he says that he's sure that this is the victim and that he picked her up in Oklahoma. Wow. He's seen the pictures. Now we got Oklahoma. I picked her up in Oklahoma because I see the matchbooks there.
To kind of talk about the matchbooks too, I mean, you'd think, to kind of dig into this piece of evidence, you'd think that there'd be some fingerprints, there'd be something that actually linked Lucas to them. And what we know from the documents we have is that fingerprints were never taken from the matchbooks until Lucas was brought in, at which point the matchbooks had deteriorated to where they couldn't get one. And also, the matchbook itself had writing on it. And they did test the routing, and it was not a match for Henry.
Not a match for Henry.
So there's really nothing linking him to the matchbooks.
Well, see, and just because the matchbooks were laying there near the body doesn't mean they were deposited at the time the body was deposited.
Right.
They could have been there forever. They might have been deteriorating out there on the side of the road instead of in the evidence locker at the sheriff's office, you know. So I understand them not sending those in for fingerprints. I don't know if I would have, because in the 80s, it was pretty hard to get fingerprints. We couldn't even get fingerprints off beer cans back then.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it was
difficult
very
thing?
difficult. Yeah.
Okay. Because to me, if you're at a crime scene, all you got is a body, some socks, and 2 matchbooks. That's all the evidence you got. I would have been testing everything I could. If that's your crime scene, I would have. But
I agree.
But you're right. It's different time.
Different time. And law enforcement and prosecutors aren't concerned about turning over every stone, because after this case, they got 100 more waiting in line, 200 more, 300 more. I mean, it's a thankless job with a heavy workload and not enough pay.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
If you have a confession, I mean, come on.
Yeah. What the prosecutor is looking for and what the policeman is looking for, do I have enough to convict?
Right.
If I got enough to convict this guy, I don't care if somebody else did the crime, if I got enough to convict him. And that's the prevailing mentality of prosecutors and of police. That's why I didn't get along with the police and the prosecutors that well
You
when
did
I was
not.
DA. No, I
You
didn't.
did not.
I support law enforcement. I just think it should be done properly and right.
And fairly.
And fairly, because law enforcement is government. Government screwing with individuals.
Yeah.
Screwing with people.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's Boutwell, man. He wants this conviction, and he's already leading this guy. Now he's seen the matchbooks, and he said, so I pick her up in Oklahoma. Okay, that fits. You could have killed her in Oklahoma and then driven her down, dumped her off in Georgetown.
Sure.
But he's still got the problem that Henry's saying, well, I did it in early 1979. Remember, this murder was Halloween.
Yes.
Halloween night, 1979. So Boutwell goes, okay, let's go back to the time frame here. And so Lucas, well, that would have been in the early part of 79. I would think somewhere around approximately either May or June of 79.
Like how he says early, but then shoots for the middle. So he's got 6 months covered by that sentence.
So then it's like, okay, ball's in your court, Boutwell. So now Boutwell. Okay, well, that's the wrong girl then, because that's not the right time at all. Okay, that's not the right time. Now, what kind of question is that?
Well, that's one where he guessed 6 months. You know it's not 6. Let's guess the other 6.
So he knows it's not early, and middle's not the right time at all. So now when is it? Okay.
Late.
Well, that must have been some other girl, Henry, because that's not the right time at all. And that's volunteering information. That's leading the witness, you know. Not supposed to do that. Shame, shame. All right, and Lucas, it's not? Isn't that funny? It's not? That's not the right time at all. It's not? Boutwell,
Oh, boy.
Lucas, you've got one more to unravel, and that's for sure. Meaning, okay, well,
Okay, it wasn't this one. There's another one out there. It's just about all of it.
That'll be in the early part of 79. You got another one almost identical. That's what Lucas is telling Boutwell. So I was right. I did kill. Well, yeah, okay. They had him packed so tight by the end, he was killing just about one a day.
Yes.
Lucas has clearly said 3 separate times now that the murder he's talking about occurred several months before the victim in question here. But Boutwell just keeps going. Then Lucas tells Boutwell that the murder would have been a mile or 2 at the most out of Austin. And Boutwell says, well, that wouldn't be right. That wouldn't be right then on this one. This one was near Georgetown, which is almost 30 miles north of Austin. So he's already given him Oklahoma. He's given him the date.
Yep.
That you know that if it's not early and it's not middle, then it's got to be toward the end.
Right. And now he's giving him geographic location.
Now he's just giving him near Georgetown, 30 miles north of Austin. Now, in the confession you read when we started this, the signed confession,
yes.
Does it sound anything like this?
No. His signed one actually puts it southbound towards San Antonio. So even after this conversation, what he signs off on is still different.
And when you're reading the typed out confession, even though it's all wrong, it flows.
It does flow.
It flows. It's not, oh, I think this, no, that. Oh, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe this, maybe that. No, after he does all his picking and choosing, yeah, that's right. No, that ain't right. That's not right at all. Yeah, I'm reading, that's the exact words he said. That's not right at all. And all that picking and choosing, and then he goes and then writes down just the right guesses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not confession. That's the right guesses. Thank you for listening to the Vic Feazell Show podcast. We're a primary source podcast. We're different from the others. Other podcasts, they read about events and people and talk about them. We talk about events we've experienced. We talk about people we know.